Story number one. So this happened about 2 years ago, back when I was delivering pizzas for a chain on the outskirts of town. Not my favorite job, but usually decent tips. One night I got sent on this order to a place called Stillman Loop. Just this little horseshoe-shaped dirt road looping through thick trees, almost out in the forest. Phone reception always cut out there. GPS never quite got it right. But I delivered out that way a handful of times. It was always a weird vibe. Quiet, too dark, not the friendly kind of neighborhood. This time it was around 8:45 p.m., already pitch black out. The ticket just said trailer 12, extra cheese, pay cash. The manager gave me a weird look when I read the address. He said he'd gotten complaints from drivers before about Stillman Loop, but he wouldn't say why. Anyway, I was cruising down the main road, and as soon as my wheels hit that dirt, my headlights started acting up, flickering for half a second, then just a dull yellow, like the bulbs were going out or something. The radio picked up static. Even with the windows up, it felt like the night just pressed in on me. I got this cold sensation, like those icy fingers you get on the back of your neck for no reason. Turning onto the loop is where it first got weird. I caught a glimpse of this figure, a woman, I think, out in the trees. She was just barely in my headlight, maybe 20 feet away, long grayish hair, super pale, wearing what looked like a nightgown. At first I thought, maybe someone lost. But as I drove by, she didn't react, just stood there with her face turned toward the road, not blinking, not moving. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor grabbing their mail in their pajamas, or an old lady taking out her dog. But then, around the next corner, there was another one, or maybe the same woman, same hair, same blank stare. This time a man further down, but also frozen and watching me, hands limp at his sides. Now my heart was going fast. Every few yards it was like someone was standing out among the trees, just far enough from the road that I couldn't quite make out their faces, but close enough to see their heads follow my car. No movement, no waving, just this silent, staring attention. My skin went cold, and my hands were shaking on the wheel. When I finally got to trailer 12, an old single wide at the end of the loop, there were almost no lights. Just a rectangle of blue behind an old curtain, probably a TV on inside. As I parked, I realized someone was pressed right up against the window, just a sliver of a face in the glass. I swear they were watching me the entire time I was getting out of my car. I walked up and suddenly it felt like all the sounds around me just stopped. No crickets, no breeze, nothing. I knocked, said pizza delivery. The door cracked open and a girl, maybe 16, big brown eyes, tangled hair. Just enough light to see her face came out. Not fully, but enough to see inside the trailer. Empty. No one except for her. But I knew that I had seen someone. Just now, standing by the window. The girl stared at me for a long second and then whispered, "Don't look at them." I froze. "Look at who?" I managed. In the blink of an eye, she snatched the pizza, slid a 20 in my hand, and slammed the door. The silence was so heavy that my ears rang. I turned back to my car, and now there were 4 or 5 people, just at the edge of the tree line, watching. I couldn't even make out their features, but I felt them, like they were waiting for me to mess up, to trip and fall, or maybe just look them in the eye. One of the figures, which looked like the woman I had seen while coming here, slowly moved her hand. She waved with one hand in the air. That's when my car lights snapped on by themselves, headlights blazing into the trees. I nearly dropped the tip money and sprinted to the car, fumbling with my keys. When I finally slammed the door shut, I dared a quick look back. Nobody in the trees at all. It was like they vanished the second I looked away. I drove out, breathing hard, feeling like I had been followed the entire time. Once I hit the main road, I checked my rear view again. At first, a faint silhouette of figures standing in between the tree line. I hit the gas as hard as I could, and when I was away, a decent amount of park gone now. I looked back through my rear view. Again. This time, nothing but empty headlights and mist. The next morning, I told my manager. He pulled up the order, no such trailer in the system, and the phone number on the order went to a disconnected line. When I went back later in daylight out of morbid curiosity, trailer 12 was empty, abandoned. Half the windows were busted out and nobody was around. People always tried to come up with explanations. Meth heads, squatters playing tricks, prank calls from bored kids. I wanted to believe all that, but every night after that, when I closed my eyes, I saw those faces at the edge of the woods, waiting. Maybe they're still there. Maybe they're just part of the dark, silently watching anyone foolish enough to drive the loop after sunset. But one thing that I knew was that I never delivered there again. Never again. Story number 2. I've seen a lot of weird stuff delivering pizzas in the city, but nothing's ever gotten under my skin like what happened at the old Lanford apartments last year. And trust me, I'm a pretty logical guy. I don't believe in ghosts or any of that crap, but I haven't gone near that place since. And after you hear this, I think you'll get why. It was a Thursday, already half past midnight. That means crappy tips and drunk college kids usually, but whatever. Dispatch ringed me up with a last-minute order, large pepperoni, going all the way to Lanford, this ugly half-empty complex that should have been condemned a decade ago. The weird stuff starts with, the ticket says, apartment 312, third floor, end of the hall. I've delivered to Lanford dozens of times, and it's only got 3 floors but goes up to apartment 310 max. I asked the girl at dispatch if she was sure. She said the guy was insistent, 3rd floor, end of the hallway. I showed up parking under the one busted security light, and the place was dead silent. Only a couple of windows had lights on, but barely. As I lugged the pizza to the front entrance, the buzzer didn't work. I texted the number on the receipt, got a one-word reply, open. That's it. The lobby smelled like cigarettes and boiled broccoli. The elevators were always busted, so I hiked up the stairs, my footsteps echoing, everything just a little too quiet. The only light on the 3rd floor was the green exit sign at the far end, flickering on and off. Not a single ceiling bulb working. At the end of the hall, where 310 should be the last unit, I saw a door. Buckled, yellowed, hinges rusted, cracked open just a few inches. That was something which my mind couldn't decipher. I remembered that wall being completely solid, just a blank stretch of cracked paint the last time I was here. No door there. I stood there for a minute, pizzas in hand, thinking maybe it was a prank. I was about to call dispatch again when I heard this warped, old-timey music drifting from the apartment. At first I thought it was a radio, but then I recognized it. Something from an old black and white cartoon. Like really old, the kind my granddad used to have on VHS. I knocked and said, "Pizza delivery." A soft voice, almost whispering, came from inside. "Come in. Leave it. That's all." People asked if I was scared. Maybe I was just tired because I pushed the door open a little more. The air inside hit me like a wall, cold, stagnant, with a bare bulb way in back barely lighting the room. Everything was draped in bed sheets, couches, chairs, lamps, like nobody's lived there in years. The TV was old, the kind with huge dials on the front, glowing too blue for black and white, showing grainy cartoon with big-eyed animals moving in jittery loops. That staticky noise over the sound made my ears ring and my skin itch at the same time. I walked in a few steps, just enough to set the pizza on what looked like a coffee table. "Hello," I called out, but beyond the TV light, there was just darkness. A smell, like cat pee and metal, hit me. I blinked and then I saw something shift behind the old sheet on the couch. It dropped to the floor with a barely audible thud. I honestly don't know how to describe what I saw and heard then. Out of the corner of my eye, something low skittered behind the couch, the sheet moving like it brushed past. There was a scraping, dragging sound, and a strange, hurried breathing just out of sight. My chest tightened. Something in my brain screamed at me not to look. I yelled, "Ah, pizza's here!" and dropped the pizza on the table. All I could hear was that cartoon music and the shuffling behind the couch, getting faster, like whatever it was crawling on all fours, circling. That's when the TV volume cranked up by itself, blasting ear-splitting cartoon laughter. A pale, skinny arm reached out from behind the couch, bluish, gaunt fingers. I bolted. As I turned, the hall behind me seemed longer, much longer, with the exit sign now impossibly far away, and the walls bending the wrong way, like a fun house but stretched and wrong. I ran anyway, heart hammering, pizza bag forgotten on the floor. It felt like someone was behind me, breathing hard and animal-like. When I finally got to the stairwell door, I slammed into it and nearly tumbled the whole way down, scraping my elbow raw. Out in the freezing air, I realized the pizza bag was gone, maybe still up there. Every window on the third floor was dark except the faint blue flash of a cartoon flicker, way at the end of the building. I watched the exit for a while. Nothing. Nobody ever came out. I tried laughing it off the next day. Told my manager someone must have been squatting in an unused room, or maybe I was just dead tired and imagining things. But I knew what I saw was too vivid to be a dream. I confirmed with the owner of the building. He told me that all the apartment keys were accounted for, and there was no 312. Just a bricked wall at the end of that hallway, like always. The number I texted, dead, went straight to a "this number is not in service" message when I tried. I wish I could chalk it up to sleep deprivation, or squatters, or even some elaborate prank. But I can still smell that cold, stale air sometimes when I walk past certain buildings at night. And every time a busted cartoon comes on, my skin crawls. I never went for delivery to Lanford again, and I never ever go up to the third floor. Sometimes, though, when everything's quiet in my apartment, around 2 a.m., I swear I still hear that cartoon music drifting down the hall. Just for a second, and I close my door, lock it tight, and remind myself, none of it was real. At least I hope not. Story number 3. This happened less than a year ago, and it's still my first thought every time I get a weird address on my delivery app. And trust me, I've had some real oddballs. It was a weekday, dreary, raining off and on, and I had picked up an extra shift delivering pizza around the city to make rent. Lunchtime was nearly over, so I figured I would catch one last order before heading home. The ping came in for an apartment building I knew well. The Arbor on 16th, upscale, lots of tech people. The delivery note just said, "Call on arrival, leave at my door if no answer." I recognized the repeat customer profile pic in the system. A woman with shoulder-length brown hair, sharp cheekbones, faint smile. She always tipped well. I made my way and reached the building, umbrella out. No answer to my text, so I buzzed 6F like the order said. A woman stepped into the lobby from the mail alcove just as I walked in. And this is where it gets strange. She looked exactly like the woman from the profile photo. Same cardigan, same glasses, even the same elbow-length earrings I'd noticed before with a dorky pizza slice design. She flashed me the faint half-smile, told me the elevator's been fussy, apologized for the inconvenience, and gestured for me to follow her up the stairs. Not wanting to be rude and thinking maybe this was just the customer being helpful, I went along, balancing the pizza and her soda. I was a few steps behind her, and though the stairwell was brightly lit, she moved quiet, almost soundlessly. I don't remember her shoes making any noise, which struck me even then as weird. We got off at the 6th floor and she turned towards the long, freshly renovated hallway. Then, at apartment 6F, she just pointed, "You can just leave it there." "Thanks." She opened her phone as if to Venmo a tip. Something about the way she kept glancing up at me, out of the corner of her eye, made me nervous. But just then, a phone rang further down the hall. It was that very specific marimba ringtone that came standard on iPhones. The woman in front of me didn't react, but a voice, her voice, answered a call that seemed to come from down the corridor. It echoed a little, distorted, but it was unmistakably the same. Now I was weirded out. I turned to look, and down at the far end, near the trash chute, I saw another woman standing in the shadows. She was identical, a perfect match, down to the pizza earrings. I blinked hard, thinking I was tired from too many shifts, but the woman at 6F was gone. I stared at the door. It was closed. A new "thank you, have a great day" text came in on my phone, but now the customer photo pop-up was different. It was a selfie of me in the hallway, timestamped just a minute ago. I didn't take it. I never gave anyone my phone. A door creaked behind me. The woman, copy number 3, stepped out of 6E, looking me up and down. Same face, same clothes. This one sort of smirked. I stammered out something like, "Sorry for bothering you," and bolted down the emergency stairwell, pizza bag still dangling empty from my hand. The stairs twisted as I went down, steps echoing weirdly. I burst into the lobby, breathing hard, and almost dropped my keys when I saw, out of the corner of my eye, the same woman again, standing near the rental office window, tapping away at her phone. She glanced up. Her expression was blank, almost mannequin-like. She smiled again, slow and deliberate. Heartbeat jackhammering, I jammed the metal security door open and walked out into the rain. When I finally got into my car, I checked my phone. The delivery app now had a login notification from unknown device. I checked the customer's order profile. Now her picture was a low-res, grainy shot of me, standing outside my car, taken only moments before. I scrolled up and all my recent profile pictures had changed, each to her face but gradually blending into my own. I restarted the phone, tried to uninstall the app, but it kept popping back up, sending me pings for repeat customer at 6F. I chalked it up to a glitch, or maybe the woman had a twin and they were messing with me. I tried searching prank twins Arbor apartments, but got nothing. No one online seems to know her, and after asking another regular customer about the twins in 6F, they looked at me like I'd lost my mind. About 2 weeks later, another order came up for 6F. This time I declined. Someone else had taken it. I asked them, after their shift, if it was a woman, brown hair, pizza earrings. He shook his head. Nobody answered the door, left the pizza, got an instant Venmo. Weirdest thing though, the profile pic changed, or at least that's what I thought or saw. Don't remember much though. For days after, every time I looked in reflective glass, bus windows, my phone's black screen, even shiny doorknobs, I could swear I saw her face distort into mine, or the other way around, just for half a second. I still deliver, but never in that part of town. And I deleted the app, got a new phone. But sometimes at night, if I'm walking and see my reflection in a dark shop window, I watch for a second longer than I probably should, wondering if she'll blink before I do. I don't know if it was a glitch, a prank, a hacker, a hallucination, or, hell, who knows, something else entirely. All I know is that sometimes something is standing right behind me in the glass, grinning that thin, familiar smile, and I haven't worn red in months. Story number 4, I don't really believe in ghosts, never have. My big brother used to jump out at me in the dark as a kid, so I get jumpy sometimes, sure, but I always roll my eyes at the full-on ghost stories you see online. But what happened on Millidge Court last winter? Well, it sounds absurd maybe, but it's the kind of weird that sticks in your head and doesn't let go. I was working evening shifts at the pizza place to save up for a down payment, mostly local stuff, but once in a while I'd get sent out into those new-built developments on the outskirts. Millidge Court was one of those places. All the houses look identical, big square boxes, 3 windows out front, fake stone, no real trees, just saplings. It's one big circular street, cold and windswept in winter. The first time, it was a Saturday night, late January. Snow was falling, just starting to stick, and the roads were quiet except for my car, headlights bouncing off every front window. I pulled in around 8 p.m. and noticed all the porch lights on at once. Every house, even though only house number 18 had placed an order, it was weirdly bright. I didn't see anyone. No kids' bikes, no cars parked outside, not even footprints in the fresh snow. I walked up to house 18 with the pizza and rang the bell. It was one of those video ones with a blue ring, and for the first couple of seconds, nothing happened. Then, as I was about to ring again, I heard a dog barking somewhere inside, followed by 2 short beeps, like a smoke alarm low-batteried. The door cracked open just a hair, and a man's voice said, "Leave it." I slid the pizza through the gap, waited for the guy to grab it, and caught a glimpse, maybe 5 seconds, of the hallway. It was empty and spotlessly clean. The porch lights on all the houses went out at exactly the same time, like someone hit a switch. It gave me goosebumps, but I chalked it up to the new development being wired together. Maybe somebody programmed the lights. A week later, I got another order. Same house, almost the same time. Same weather except windier. I pulled in, and this time headlights caught pale shapes moving in every front window. Not people exactly, but silhouettes in the same spot in every single house, all perfectly still. I thought maybe the lights reflected weirdly through the snow, or maybe those cheap Halloween cutouts. Either way, it made me walk a little faster. The air was silent, no wind, not even the hum of a furnace. I brought the pizza to house 18 and waited, looking around. That's when I realized again, there weren't any footprints in the snow, not even my own. Like the snow kept falling and erased them right away. The silhouette in house 20's window, 2 doors down, suddenly turned sideways and vanished. At nearly the same moment, the one in front of house 16 did the same thing. It felt choreographed. House 18's bell didn't light up. No one came to the door. I knocked, and from inside I heard 5 beeps, and then that dog, barking on a loop, perfectly even. 15 seconds later, the door opened, just a crack, and a kid's hand reached out for the box. The skin was oddly pale, the hand small, but there was nothing really off, except I didn't hear anyone talking to the kid. The door slammed shut with a bang. I walked a little faster that time. I looked over my shoulder the whole way to my car and was halfway down the block before I realized every porch light had come back on, synchronized. By now I was getting spooked. The third time it was snowing heavily. Big fat flakes, almost no visibility. The order came early, around 6 p.m., and it just said, "Don't ring. Leave on porch." As soon as I pulled into the curve, my car radio went nuts. Static, then a few words in a distorted voice. "Leave it. Leave it." Could have been interference, sure, but it sounded way too clear. Every house on the circle flicked its lights on and off, rapid fire. It was like being inside a time-lapse video. I stepped out and the street was dead silent. No echo, no wind, just a straight-up dead air. Snow was falling so hard it muffled everything. I left the pizza on the porch at house 18, snapped a quick photo for proof, and heard an entire chorus of dogs barking from behind every door, all at the exact same time. Same number of barks, repeating twice. I got in my car and didn't look back. Near the exit, every house's front window had a shadowy figure standing right up close to the glass, unmoving. As I pulled away, the snow behind me was perfectly undisturbed. At least that's what I saw before I hit the gas as fast as I could. 2 weeks later, we got one more order. This time it was after a hard freeze. The air hurt your face. The ticket said immediate delivery. As I entered the circle, my headlights flickered, and my car's electronics went dark for a second. Radio, clock, lights, before everything blinked back on. All the houses were lit up again, but the windows were totally black, curtainless, but not reflecting anything. I walked fast and kept my head down, but I swear I saw 3 different houses' doors open as I passed, just enough for a slit of darkness to show. Not a sound came out. When I looked back, nothing had changed except for a feeling of dozens of eyes staring. For the rest of my shift, and honestly, sometimes even now, the memory of that silence gives me chills. I asked around. My coworker told me that his cousin tried delivering there once too, but nobody ever really sees who answers the doors, and the orders always come late, always cash left on the porch, never any lights out back. Maybe it's just a weird neighborhood with rich people who don't talk, or maybe they all have their houses on some program and play pranks on drivers. But when I told my manager, she said that the street's been empty for months. The water main broke and everyone relocated. I had no idea what to believe and what not to. My car radio wouldn't stop picking up static for the rest of the week. After this, I started trading those runs whenever I could. I still don't believe in ghosts, not really. But if you're ever on Millidge Court on a snowy night, I wouldn't recommend slowing down. Story number 5. I've been delivering pizza for almost 5 years now. Something happened to me last winter, and it's stuck in my head ever since. It started like any crappy cold shift. Dark by 4:30 p.m., snow coming down sideways, streets half-plowed and slippery. Around 9 p.m., the board lights up with an online order to this out-of-the-way new suburb the company just started delivering to. You know the type. Roads finished, streetlights on, but most of the houses just empty frames, maybe 2 or 3 actual homes finished. This order was a large pepperoni, breadsticks, and a 2-liter of Mountain Dew. Paid online, no contact delivery, seemed normal enough, which honestly is never the case for the ones you end up remembering. When I pulled up, it was to the very last house at the dead end of this crescent. The porch light was on, which was a relief because the rest of the street was darkness and howling wind. The house looked fairly lived in, shoveled walk, footprints from earlier that day, 2 trash bins awkwardly propped by the garage. I grabbed the insulated bag and rang the bell, barely hearing the chime over the wind whistling behind me. The door opened almost instantly, catching me off guard, like the guy had been standing right there waiting. He was maybe late 20s, tall and thin, with a patchy beard. There was something off about his eyes. Not bloodshot, but just tired, wide open, like he was startled or surprised to see me. But he grinned and said, "Oh, awesome. Thank you, man. Hey, could you just bring that second pizza up to my wife? She's upstairs resting." I checked the bag. I definitely only grabbed the 1 large pizza and breadsticks, but I just nodded and said, "Sure, where should I go?" He jabbed his thumb toward the staircase over his shoulder and shrugged. "First door on your left. She might be asleep, but just set it on the little table, okay?" Then he vanished into the kitchen, and I was left standing in the hall, pizza in hand, holding a conversation halfway finished. I can't explain why I actually went up the stairs, but it almost felt rude not to. Plus, the hall had family photos, kids' shoes at the door, a pink mitten left on the staircase. Nothing at all seemed wrong. Except as I took each step, I noticed the house was freezing cold. Not like thermostat low cold, but the biting, dead air cold that fogs your breath inside. I paused halfway up, thinking I could see something moving in the gloom of the hall. Some shadow flicker. But maybe it was just the crappy light bulb in the staircase. At the top, the first door on the left was open, maybe 6 inches. A slice of orange lamplight spilled onto the gray carpet. I knocked softly, cleared my throat, and waited. I heard breathing, like someone asleep, or maybe just really focused on not breathing at all. I pushed the door open and immediately felt a sharp draft hit my legs, even though the door and window were both shut. The room was empty except for a battered rocking chair angled toward the corner and a tiny table with a photo in a dollar store frame. The chair was gently rocking, just an inch or two of motion, but enough for the floorboards to creak in a way that sounded almost deliberate. No bed, no other furniture, no sign of anyone. I called out, "Pizza?" Because what else do you say? The room was so cold that it made my teeth hurt. I set the pizza carefully on the table, peeking at the photo as I did. It was a young woman smiling, arms around the bearded guy from downstairs. There was something written on the frame in marker, but it was smudged and I couldn't read it. The chair groaned, a long, low sound like someone standing up. I turned and honest to God, I wished I hadn't. The chair was slowing, as if someone had just left it. I got this crawling sense of dread then, not fear exactly, but like icy water pouring into my stomach. I practically ran down the stairs, nearly slipping on the bottom step and bumping the wall. The guy was waiting by the open front door, no longer smiling. His whole face had gone cold too. He thanked me a little too quickly, shoved cash into my hand. "Thanks, man. Don't worry about her. Have a good night," he said, and shut the door before I could say anything. I just stood on the porch for a second, pizza bag dangling from my hand. I didn't realize my breath was still fogging in the air, even outside. Back in the car, I counted the money. He'd paid exactly what was owed. No tip. Just as I checked, the headlights of my car swept over the upstairs window. The curtain moved as if someone had just stepped back. Part of me wants to believe there was a rational explanation. Maybe he was grieving. Maybe he talked to someone who wasn't there. Maybe he liked to keep her memory alive with the pizza order. Or maybe it was just a draft that made the chair move, and the cold was from a busted vent. But I know what I felt. That feeling in the room, like you're intruding, like something wanted you gone, it never really left me. I've never been back to that house since, and I still keep the crumpled bill in my glove box just in case. Story numberado. I've done pizza deliveries for almost 8 years, mostly night shifts. You see weird stuff if you do this long enough. People in towels, secret parties, even a raccoon once. Never thought anything of it. But what happened on Ashfield Lane, I still can't shake. First, the call came in at 2:08 a.m., which alone is odd enough. Nobody orders pizza that late, not unless they're blackout drunk or pulling an all-nighter. But money's tight, so I clicked accept. The address was unfamiliar, 57 Ashfield Lane, a side street in that weird deserted block near the old canal where the streetlights barely work. As I turned the corner off Main, my headlights caught nothing but thick fog tangled at knee height, clumps of melted snow, and cracked, empty sidewalks. I pulled up and immediately regretted it. The whole place gave off a vibe, like it had been skipped over by time. No cars, no lit windows, just this tired old Victorian house, half swallowed by vines and black with peeling paint. But the porch light was on. That's what made me do my job. Someone was home. Before I even got halfway up the walkway, the stench hit. At first, I thought maybe the neighbors had left a trash bin open, but the closer I got, the worse it got. Sharp, like ammonia. But underneath was this sweet, putrid heaviness you only smell near roadkill. I dry heaved once, even holding my coat over my mouth. I rang the bell. The chime was broken, a strangled clank, clank. I waited. No footsteps, nobody peeking through the blinds. Just silence so thick it had a pressure to it. That's when I glanced up. The windows on the first floor, the ones just above my head, were blazing with bright yellow-white light. The kind you get from old, too-hot bulbs. Something about it made me freeze. All that light, in a street that dead? Someone was surely up. Hello? Pizza for 57? Nothing. I knocked, a little harder than usual. My palm smacked the door, and the wood gave, softer than I expected. Suddenly, the door swung open, maybe half a foot, cold air whooshing out. The smell hit me full force, and for a heartbeat, I almost bolted. I was about to shout, "Hello!" again, when something made me step inside. Probably the light. Houses this dead don't look lived in. Right away, everything felt wrong. The entryway was cluttered with boots, mail, a faded umbrella, one of those old patterned ones. A lamp burned in the hall, and the TV in the next room flickered with silent static onto the walls. The temperature inside was freezing, but even so, I sweated under my delivery jacket. "Pizza's here?" My voice cracked, way too loud. That's when I saw the couch, straight ahead in the parlor. Curled up, not slumped, not collapsed, but sitting neat as a photo in a textbook, was a skeleton. Not a Halloween prop. This was stained yellow, the teeth bared, the head cocked in my direction. Bits of gray fluff, maybe cobwebs, draped over its shoulders and clung to the velvet couch. A newspaper lay draped beside it, pages curling, ink faded. Every hair on my arm stood up. I blinked hard, my eyes watered from the stink, and my brain tried to twist this into something rational. Maybe it was plastic, a prank. Maybe the owner was an anatomy professor. Maybe I was being filmed for some gross viral video. Still, I set the pizza on the little side table, just inside the door. As I did, I felt, God, I don't even know how to explain this, a sort of pressure, like the room sucked in a breath. My eyes snapped back to the skeleton, and for one split second, I'd swear its chin had dropped, its bony fingers curled in a little further. A shadow twisted against the wall. I heard a ticking from the kitchen clock, too slow, like a heartbeat. My vision tunneled. I left the pizza, forgot the soda completely, and I bolted, half tripping across the front rug. My hand shook so badly that I barely managed to pull the door shut behind me. Heart thumping, I scrambled into my car. I sat there gasping, sweat stinging my eyes. As I fumbled for my phone to dial 911, I looked back up at the house. The porch was dark. All the first floor lights were suddenly off. No movement, no flicker or shadow left. Only the fog against the windows and that awful, dead silence pressing in. The cops didn't show until daylight. When I tried explaining, I felt like a lunatic. They were polite, radioed it in, and told me folks abandoned houses like these all the time. Drug overdoses, squatters, whatever. The part that stuck with me. The officers said the skeleton in the living room had lain there almost 3 years, and nobody in the neighborhood had noticed. The house had been officially vacant that long. No electricity, no new mail. A couple of nights later, I drove past Ashfield Lane again. The house's silhouette loomed against a gray sky, all windows dead black. I dreamed of it for weeks. The skeleton on the couch, the shifting shadow, the lights that shouldn't have been there, remembering things that couldn't move, breathing in a house that shouldn't have been alive. No customer ever claimed that pizza. Nobody ever called to ask about it. I tell myself it was my mind making shapes in the dark, or some leftover current setting off the old lights, or a prank left behind by the last tenant. But when my shift runs late and I see an old house with a lamp on upstairs, warm and yellow, on a street where no one should be, I just keep driving. Story number 7. So this all happened during the summer 2 years ago, when I was picking up extra shifts for Lake Grove Pizza and Pasta. Nothing fancy, just enough for spare cash before I went off to college. The area's got a mix of regular houses, a few weirdos, and some high-end places by the lake where rich city people escape for vacation weekends. What happened with the lake house? Well, I still think about it. It started on a Friday evening in late July. Busy night because of some boat festival. The guy who usually takes the lakeside runs called in, so I got the lakeside deliveries. The ticket said 379 Lakeview Road, side door please, no contact, tip in envelope. Sounded normal. I roll up the winding gravel drive, low sun making the water shimmer. The place is all glass and cedar, huge windows staring at the lake. As I step onto the side porch, I hear a splash from out on the lake. Could be a fish, could be a duck, whatever. Then a second splash, way closer, right beneath the deck. Now the back of my neck prickles, but it's dusk and bugs are everywhere. The side doors propped open a crack, and I smell something sharp, sort of like wet leaves and metal, almost like during a thunderstorm. I call out, but nobody answers. Shove the pizza box just inside and knock once. Quick. Through the kitchen, I spot muddy footprints on the pale tiles, leading from the glass doors to the stairs. Bare feet, pretty small, like a woman or a messed up kid. But nobody's down there. A floorboard squeaks upstairs, and a weirdly flat voice from above says, "Thank you, please go." The hair on my arm stands up. I leave fast, tell myself someone's just playing games or the family has a kid hiding upstairs. Could be lake water, wet feet, whatever. That night my shoes, for some reason, left little damp prints at the pizza shop. I checked them. They were dry. On Sunday night, it's the same address, different ticket though. Curbside, Coke please. Deliver at 10 p.m. sharp. I drive up, hit the headlights on the garage. It's dead quiet. No music, no lights. Even the bugs sound muffled out here. Parked out front, I text the number on the order. No response. I'm halfway up the drive when I hear the exact same splash from the lake as before, and something scrapes along the rocks below the deck. Scared of raccoons, maybe, I skirt along the edge and drop the box at the door. I look through the glass, but there's nothing but ugly old jazz music, soft and grainy, coming from an ancient radio on the kitchen counter. As I turn, I catch a glimpse in the reflection. A tall, stretched-out shadow moving along the glass. Super thin, spider legs, but moving upright. For a second, I think someone's inside, maybe a party clown or someone in a costume. But the music stutters like a CD skipping, and suddenly there's silence. I leave. Get home. My dog won't come near me. It hides under the bed, whining. Weird, but maybe I stepped in something foul. It's midweek, storm over the lake, pouring rain. They order again, wings and 2 sodas. Drop at covered porch, use code on keypad. The code works, and the door clicks open. As I step into the entryway, I'm hit with a cold gust and that same weird metallic smell. Stronger than ever. There are waterlogged footprints, way bigger this time. I hear what sounds like footsteps upstairs, slow and dragging, and a girl's voice starts singing a little off-key rhyme. Don't look outside, don't look outside. Just repeating that, getting softer and softer. A branch cracks against the window and I see a shape out on the dock. Someone standing ankle deep in the lake water, soaking, unmoving. Lightning flashes. In the after image, it looks like her arms are way too long, almost hanging to the water. The lights flicker and all at once the house goes dark, except for the radio, which switches on, blaring the same broken jazz from before, but backwards and slow. I bolt, slip on the porch, and skin my palm, run for my car as the doors behind me bang shut over and over in the wind. Back at the shop, my boss laughs and tells me lakes get weird updrafts and echoes, and kids break in and mess around. I want to believe him. They order again on Friday. Midnight, leave pizza on back deck. Why I agree, I have no idea. I don't get out of my car for a minute, just look. There's no moon, but the whole house glows faintly from inside. Maybe emergency lights, maybe reflections from the water. As I walk the deck, I feel like something's watching. All the glass doors are steamed up, except for freshly wiped patches, oval shapes right at human head height, as if someone pressed their face over and over against the glass. As I get close, I realize there are more prints, inside and out. The pizza box is weirdly hot, almost burning my hands. When I set it down, something knocks hard from under the deck. 3 loud bangs, then a dozen. I freeze, then sprint back to my car, convinced there are figures in the water just beneath the dock, arms lifting onto the planks. When I get home, I'm shaking. The next day, my own bathroom mirror fogs and clears in those same oval shapes as I shower. It's been almost a year since then. Nobody's called from that house since. Someone said the family sold it. Another guy said it burned down. But I don't know. Sometimes late at night, my phone will play old jazz out of nowhere, like radio static. I tell myself it's a glitch, or someone put something in my car. Either way, I don't take the lake road anymore. And when it rains, sometimes I still find muddy footprints by my own front door, small and barefoot, even though I always wipe my shoes. Story number 8. I don't know if you'd call this a ghost story or just one of those weird things that happens when you're working delivery and running on too much caffeine, but it's the one order I still think about when I'm driving around at night all these months later. This was late last fall, windy and damp, way after the dinner rush. I was taking a triple order. I still remember 2 larges and a medium to a few different addresses out by the rail yard. Last drop-off was a place I'd never been before. A tiny white house at the very edge of town, chipped paint, yard overgrown. You know the type. You almost miss it if you're not looking. I got an uneasy feeling right away. Nothing in particular, just that the street was too quiet, the house lights were all yellow and dim, and there were no cars anywhere. Just the heavy stillness of midnight air. I told myself it was just another weird late tip. I knocked. A woman answered. 20s, long brown hair in a braid. She seemed nice enough, friendly smile, sounded almost relieved when she saw me, like she was expecting someone worse. "Pizza's here," she called over her shoulder, but the house stayed silent. We did the usual exchange. She fished around for bills and asked if I had change for a 20. While I waited in the doorway, I glanced past her into the kitchen. Everything was neat, a row of coffee mugs, a kettle on the stove, and on the far wall, there was this round, brass-frame mirror about the size of a dinner plate hung at my eye level. What caught me first was my own reflection, glassy and pale in the warm kitchen light. Then my skin prickled, and the little hairs on my neck stood up, because over my shoulder in the mirror, near the pantry door, I saw a pair of big yellow eyes. Not human yellow, but bright, luminescent, almost like animal eyes you catch in headlights. The pupils weren't even round. They looked slit, black, vertical. But there was nothing back there when I looked away from the mirror. Literally nothing. Just a faded apron on a hook, a mop leaning in the corner, shadows thick between the cabinets. I tried to play it cool, but my hands went clammy, and I was suddenly all too aware of how quiet it was. You know when the air just feels charged? That buzzing, static feeling, like right before a thunderstorm. It felt like that. Every instinct I had yelled at me to get out of that doorway. The woman turned and noticed where I was looking. Her smile faltered a fraction, and she said quietly, "Oh, you saw him, didn't you?" Then she laughed, but it was more forced than funny, and added, "That's just my brother. He's always wandering around at night." Casual, like that explained anything. But here's the thing. When she stepped into the kitchen to get her purse, her reflection in the mirror didn't move. The yellow eyes just blinked once, slow and reptilian, while her real body was over by the counter. I could smell this faint, weird perfume, something sharp and earthy, not like the pizzas. She handed me the cash and tipped with a little too much urgency, like she wanted me out now. She kept glancing at the kitchen. "Sorry, we don't get many people out here this late," she said, and smiled too widely. As I was backing out, I thought I saw a shadow flit behind her, much too fast. My vision tingled at the edges, like the room had darkened half a shade. I tried to act normal, stammering thanks. I stepped out onto the porch, but even before she closed the door, I heard a soft, low giggling, echo-chambered and thin from somewhere behind her, more like a recording than a real laugh. I glanced back before getting in my car. Through the window, the kitchen lights swung slightly like someone had brushed past them. The brass mirror faced outward now, reflecting the empty night, but the yellow eyes in it glowed even brighter, pinning me like headlights. I drove off. The weird thing is, when I checked the rear view mirror, for a split second, I thought I saw those same glowing eyes in the darkness between the trees on the edge of the yard, peering straight at me. The whole way home, I felt watched, like something would be there on the road, lit up in my brake lights if I dared to look. Later, I joked to my manager about it, said, "You ever get the weird ones near the rail yard?" She just shook her head and changed the subject. The order has never come up again, and every time I pass that block, the house looks empty. No lights, no cars, nothing at all. I know what I saw might be illogical to some people. I know there are probably a dozen reasonable explanations. Maybe I was tired, or the glass curved funny, or maybe it was an animal out back. But I've delivered to a lot of strange houses, and I never felt anything like that, felt seen before. Even now, when I catch my own reflection in a dark window, I swear I see something move behind me, just out of sight, waiting for me to notice. Story number 9. I've delivered pizza to just about every kind of house you can imagine. This incident, though, still sits with me. I can't explain it, and the feeling it gave me still creeps up on cold nights when I'm driving alone. This happened last spring, on a Sunday evening. We'd had the weirdest weather, one of those almost spring nights where steam comes up off the pavement, and all the air feels like wet wool. My manager printed a single last order for me before close, out near the edge of a semi-rural road. The house was 4 or 5 miles out, no neighbors close enough to see in either direction. I almost wished someone would flag me down, just for company. As I pulled up, my headlights carved into a squat little farmhouse, yellow paint peeling, porch light dim and swinging. I hesitated, double-checked the address. This was it. I grabbed the pizza, crunched up the gravel drive. The porch steps groaned beneath my feet. I rang the bell, and the door opened almost instantly. There stood an old woman, maybe 80, hair perfectly iron gray. She had these sharp, bright eyes that picked right through me. Something about her posture made me feel like she'd been waiting there, alone, long before I ever arrived. "Robbie, oh, you made it," she said, voice quivering with what sounded like genuine happiness. I blinked. "Sorry, ma'am, it's Dan from Tony's Pizza. I have your order?" She smiled long and wide. "I know, Robbie. Always right on time." She handed over a wrinkled 20, slow and careful, her hands trembling just a bit. Her eyes never dropped from mine. I tried correcting her again, but she just nodded gently. "Thank you, dear. Come in from the cold if you need, Robbie." I shook my head politely. Store policy, don't enter houses if you can avoid it. I handed off the pizza at the threshold, but she turned, moving into the little living room. Something made me look in. The place was old, sure, heavy curtains, doilies on every surface, ancient radio murmuring softly. But it was set for dinner. There were 2 plates on the kitchen table, 2 cups, 2 neatly folded napkins. Opposite hers, an empty seat pulled out as though expecting someone to join. As she set the pizza in front of her plate, she gestured at the other seat. "Robbie always brings my pizza. We eat together when he visits. Could you do me a favor, love? Call upstairs. Tell Robbie it's dinner time." I shivered. The house felt much too quiet for anyone else to be there. There were no other cars outside. I squinted at the stairwell at the back of the living room. more like a sharp, winding staircase than regular steps covered with threadbare rug. I tried to laugh it off. "Sorry, it's just me, ma'am. I should be heading—" Before I finished, I heard footsteps overhead. Slow, small, not heavy like a grown man. Light, almost dancing. It came down the hall to the top of the stairs, then stopped. The old woman smiled, eyes glistening in the weak lamplight. "He's always shy at first. You can say hello?" I stood frozen, pizza bag clutched in one hand, trying to rationalize. Maybe an adult child, a home care nurse, I told myself. Except the footsteps were distinct, the kind a kid would make. I realized then that the air smelled different too, faintly sweet, like medicine or old bubblegum. The woman's smile dropped away for just a second. "Come closer, Robbie doesn't bite." I took a step back. "Ma'am, I really need to go." My voice squeaked more than I wanted. Whatever was upstairs wasn't coming down, but it felt watchful. In the silence, I heard breathing, almost a sigh, as though someone was disappointed from up in the shadows. She gave a kind of sad little nod, like she'd already had this whole conversation before. "That's all right, dear. Maybe next Sunday. Good night, Robbie." As I turned for the door, I heard a chair scrape across the linoleum behind me, a noise so sudden and certain that I turned, really believing for a second I'd actually see someone sitting at the table. But all I saw was her, unfolding her napkin, humming a tune I didn't know. Back in my car, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I tried to put it out of my mind, but as I pulled away, I looked back, and through the frost-blurred window saw a figure. Smaller than the woman, just a hint of a hunched shape with shiny dark hair. Sitting in the second chair, eating, smiling at me. I blinked, and the shape was gone. That whole drive back, I felt a weird pressure in my chest, like something heavy was sitting with me in the car. I kept catching my breath, expecting someone to whisper in my ear. I asked my manager about it, sort of as a joke. "Hey, who's Robbie? Does he work here?" She looked puzzled, said she had no idea, that the order flux for that address had always come through different names, never the same twice. "I don't go out that way anymore if I can help it, and I never let anyone call me Robbie. But sometimes when the road's empty and it's just me and the rain on the windshield, I remember the old woman and the footsteps upstairs and wonder how long she's been waiting for Robbie to come back home." Story number 10. Nobody warns you, when you start delivering pizza, how many smells you'll memorize. Most of them are bad. Burnt cheese, old carpet, sour mop water, and whatever teenage is when it's halfway between deodorant and gym socks. You get used to it. But every so often, there's something else. I never thought air itself could taste wrong until that night. It was a Friday, late fall. Fog was rolling in soft and slow, blurring the streetlights and making the whole city feel like it was underwater. Business was brisk because nobody wanted to go out. And by midnight, the only cars on the road were taxis and delivery drivers like me. My last order took me out toward the edge of the old business district, where the houses are huge, ancient, and always look half abandoned. The address was for a crumbling Victorian, perched awkwardly between a fenced-off construction lot and the back of an empty strip mall. The kind of place with leaning porch columns, stained glass missing a few pieces, and a dead garden choked with weeds. As I parked, I noticed the yard was littered with broken bits of brick and rusted garden statues, angels and animals, all face down in the long grass, as if they'd toppled over or been pushed. When I stepped out of the car, that's when I noticed it. The air didn't just smell weird, it tasted weird. There was a sharp, sweet odor, like burnt cotton candy or antifreeze, that slid right over my teeth and sat on my tongue, numb and metallic. It sent a tingle through my gums and hit the back of my throat, and I had to fight not to cough. The fog felt thicker here, almost yellowish in the porch light. Carrying the pizza box up the path, gravel crunching under my sneakers, I became aware of the way my breaths felt sticky and cold, like the air had more weight. Before I could knock, the front door swung open a couple of inches, just enough for a wedge of yellow light to ooze out onto the porch. I paused at the threshold, standing in that sticky, wrong-smelling air, hesitant. "Delivery!" I called and waited. For a second, there was only that nearly syrupy quiet. Then a voice, thin and almost out of breath, called softly, "Come in, please. I'm in the kitchen." Instinct screamed not to cross that threshold. Store policy says never go inside, but some customers, especially in these old houses, just can't get to the door. I stepped inside, trying to act casual, and instantly the temperature dropped 5 degrees. The entryway was lined with dusty mirrors, all fogged and streaked, and every step I took made the old boards creak so loud I was sure I'd fall straight through. The air, if anything, tasted thicker in here. Each breath left a sort of film on my tongue, like I'd licked a leaking battery. I tried to breathe through my mouth, but that made it hang in my throat, syrupy and unnatural. The kitchen was at the end of a narrow hallway, illuminated by a single gutted overhead bulb. The voice belonged to an elderly woman, frail and hunched, with thinning hair pulled tight into a bun. She didn't look up as I set the pizza box on the counter, her hands busied with something I couldn't see. Back turned to me. She was muttering too softly for me to understand, but the word home repeated a few times. My knuckles brushed the countertop and it felt oddly sticky, like left-out soda. I pulled out my receipt, watching her reflection in the tarnished chrome of the toaster. At first I barely registered it, but something about the way her reflection moved wasn't right. When she shifted her arm in real life, the reflection lagged just a hair, then jerked to catch up. "Do you need change?" I managed, head buzzing from the chemical sting in my nose. She turned then. Her face was sharp and too pale, eyes almost silvery gray, white film gliding over them like she never quite blinked. "You shouldn't linger," she said in a flat, melancholy voice. "The air isn't safe tonight. It never is on late deliveries." Before I could answer, she shuffled a few bills toward me, with fingers that shook just enough to look wrong. I stuffed the money into my pocket, eager to leave. That's when I noticed something odd about the pizza box. It should have weighed maybe a pound, but it felt heavy in my hand, almost dense, like I'd set a cast iron pan inside. I pried up the lid an inch and saw, just for a second, a weird and odd-looking handprint on the cardboard. Brown dark, as though scorched or burned in place. Too small for an adult hand, but not exactly looking like a hand. My chest tightened, and the air in the kitchen seemed to shimmer with oily light. Shadows crawled against the peeling wallpaper, stretching up, taking on loose shapes like dogs or children crawling across the ceiling. Each breath was harder than the last. I could taste copper and sugar, a mix that made me dizzy. "Thank you for coming," the woman whispered, her lips barely moving. Too late, I realized the whisper didn't match the movement of her mouth, as if it came from somewhere just behind my ear. I backed out fast, almost tripping over the entryway rug, heart hammering in my ears. As I stepped onto the porch, the outside air hit me, still sour, but blessedly thin, real. The taste faded, replaced by the earthy, wet smell of rain and mud. I didn't look back. I flung the pizza bag into the car and drove off, ignoring my own trembling hands on the steering wheel. The burning taste lingered the rest of my shift. When I finally got home, I checked my pockets. Sticky residue on the bills, which left faint red smudges on my fingers that no amount of scrubbing got rid of that night. I didn't sleep well. I never saw an order from that house again. I brought it up once to a coworker and he laughed it off. Maybe chemical fumes from the construction lot, maybe someone with a weird cleaning routine. But for weeks, every time I passed by that block, my mouth would fill with that sweet metal air. And I'd swear I saw shadowy figures in the dark parts of the yard, their faces turned away, just waiting for someone to taste the air and come knocking. Story number 11, I'd been doing deliveries for about 4 years before this, and I thought I'd seen every weird late-night order you can imagine. A birthday party that looked like a cult, a guy who answered his door wearing full clown makeup, even a house with live chickens in the living room. But nothing ever dug under my skin like the night I got the call for the long-haul order. It was just after 2 in the morning, a Sunday night going into Monday, the kind of hours when even the bars are dark and the only people awake are truckers, drunks, or the dangerously lonely. I was finishing up my shift when an order pops up in our clunky old tablet. A big one, too. 3 large pies, all with extra toppings, prepaid, with tip. The delivery address just said, "Rest stop, mile 92, westbound, silver semi." Call on arrival. There was a phone number but no name. I almost begged off the run. My eyes burned, and it was a 30-minute drive out to the industrial edge of town. But the ticket said the driver left a $20 tip already, and at the time that was worth braving some boredom. My boss shrugged, said most late rest stop orders are just truckers who don't want to eat another vending machine meal. I headed out, the roads empty and shining with an oily film from a recent drizzle. There's something about industrial rest stops at night I've always hated. Everything hyper-lit but somehow shadowy. The dark beyond the concrete feeling dense and pressing. Mile 92 was even bleaker than normal. Only the faint glow from the rest stop's flickering sign, and as promised, a massive silver semi parked at the farthest bay under a dead strip light. All the other slots were abandoned except for this hulk of a vehicle, its headlights off but taillights throwing an evil red glow against the wet pavement. I swallowed hard, rolling my window down to look for life. The air was thick with diesel and something metallic, cold and sour. I pulled up and cut my engine. Instantly, my phone buzzed. An unknown call, just as the ticket had instructed. I answered, trying to sound normal. "Pizza's here." The voice on the other end was deep, gruff, like someone who'd been on the road forever. "Leave the pizzas in the sleeper. The cab's unlocked. I'm resting. Just leave them real quiet." The idea didn't sit well with me. Usually people at least pop their heads out. But the lot was empty, and I figured maybe the guy valued his sleep. I grabbed a stack of pizzas, brushed drizzle off my jacket, and approached the truck. Everything around me humming with the sort of false silence I associate with hospitals, loud with the buzz of electricity and faint hidden movement. The cab was massive up close, a gleaming silver thing, polished but streaked with wind grime. The door handle was cold as ice when I grabbed it, like it had been parked for days. I swung the door open and climbed awkwardly up with the pizzas balanced. No one was visible in the driver's seat. The smell hit me, stale sweat, cold rubber, a faint whiff of something sweet and spoiled, like cheap air freshener failing to cover up rot. The only light was from a cheap desk lamp clipped inside the sleeper area, turned away from me, casting everything into blue and gray shadows. On the console, I noticed a single Polaroid taped to the windshield. 3 kids, a man, and a woman in front of an old pizza shop. All of them smiling so wide it seemed forced, eyes a bit too bright, blackened by the flash. Every hair on my neck stiffened. I called out, "Hey, pizza's here!" No movement. I set the boxes on the little fold-out counter behind the seats. The moment I stood to leave, the truck shuddered as if a heavy animal had dropped onto the chassis. Then I heard radios, 3, maybe 4, all at once. From the dash, glove box, even a little one clipped to the sun visor, blasting static loud enough to vibrate my back molars. Through the noise, a voice whispered numbers, so quietly I could barely register it. 80, 92, 1, 37, back again, back again. I tried the door, but it slammed itself shut. Was it a gust, the angle, or something else? My mouth was suddenly dry as sand. The static and the whispered numbers rose in a spiral, and for a second I saw in the rearview mirror a shape curled up in the darkness of the sleeper. Too wide-shouldered to be a regular person, or maybe hunched, or maybe 2 people twisted together. In that lightning-bright half-second, I thought I saw the family from the Polaroid, standing in the mirror, all grown, all staring at me with the same empty smiles. Then it flickered, and there was nothing but shadows again. My hand shook as I reached to open the door again. This time it gave, and I stumbled out, the echo of those numbers still in my head. The drizzle soaked through my hair as I hurried to my car, fumbling with my keys. The headlights behind me flared on, startling me so bad I dropped my phone. By the time I picked it up and turned, the truck's lights were off again. Engine dead, cab silent. I drove off, my heart pounding, glancing back in the mirror the whole way. I spent half the drive home convincing myself it was an overtired trucker with a bad sleep schedule and a bunch of old radios. Maybe a PTSD thing, maybe pranksters. The next day, my boss asked why I'd driven out there. The order had cleared from the system, no record of a tip, no call logged from my phone. No delivery, apparently. I drove by that rest stop a week later. The same Polaroid was lying in the gutter, faded and slick and waterlogged. The faces washed pale. I haven't delivered to rest stops since, but sometimes driving at night on long empty highways, I catch a flash of silver in my rear view, and I think I hear the radios just beneath the sound of my own wheels whispering numbers that never quite add up. Sometimes I also catch a glimpse of the same semi-trucker, as if moving like a ghost vehicle behind me, following me. Story number 12. I started delivering pizzas my last year of college, mostly to help with rent and groceries, and for the most part, it was easy, just driving around, listening to whatever late-night radio would come in, zoning out in the quiet sprawl of neighborhoods. I had my regulars too, and there was one couple in particular, an older guy, always gray slacks and a cardigan, and a woman who never spoke, that ordered every few weeks. Their place was tucked on the edge of the historic district, the houses bigger and further apart, porches with gas lamps, front lawns shadowed by old trees. The man always tipped in cash, $5 or $10, sometimes more. He was one of those precise, soft-spoken people who would hand me the exact change, chat a minute about the weather, then nod and disappear back inside. His wife lurked behind him every single time, never smiling, never saying thank you, just standing half in the gloom by their staircase, eyes kind of glassy, watching. Not gonna lie, sometimes she creeped me out. It felt as if she was observing me, not in a friendly way, but more like she didn't like me being there. Late last November, about a week after the clocks changed, I got their usual order: thin crust, green peppers and olives, 2 sodas. I remember the date because the sky was smoky, a cold mist blowing through, everything slick and black. The streetlights reflected off puddles and wet leaves, making the front walk almost glassy as I carried the hot box through their hedge gate. When the old man opened the door, he didn't do his weather talk or chit-chat. Instead, right away he looked over his shoulder and said, "Darling, go let the young man in, will you?" She didn't reply but drifted away deeper into the house, her slippers making no sound on the hardwood. I'd never actually stepped through their threshold before, and I hesitated, but he insisted, just nodded and moved aside with a slight, urgent gesture. The living room was dim, heavy with the smell of wood polish and faded perfume. Everything felt chilled, like the heat hadn't been on in a while, despite the radiator groaning in the corner. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. The wife stood in the next room, almost lost in shadow, her thin white dressing gown catching what little light there was, her hands limp at her sides. The man quickly took the boxes, set them on the side table. I could see now that his hands were trembling a little. He fumbled in his back pocket for his wallet and, oddly, looked over his shoulder like he was expecting someone else to come down the hall. I was already itching to leave. The air felt charged, like the time electricity had arced from a plug and made my hair stand up. Instead of his usual reserved manner, he pressed cash into my hand. Cool, crisp bills, folded small. I glanced down and saw a $50 bill on top, which was unusual. He looked straight at me, and his eyes seemed bloodshot and tired. He said, "For your troubles, if you remember this in the morning, you'll have earned it. Not all debts get paid by money, you know." I wanted to crack a joke, but his tone wasn't right. Too heavy, too final, like he was telling me something important, but I wasn't in on it. The wife was suddenly closer, standing right behind him, almost within arm's reach, her mouth stretched into a terrible, empty smile. I smelled something sharp, like vinegar or iron. Without thinking, I pocketed the money and backed away, saying, "Thank you, have a good night." He looked past me to the open door, shivered, then shut it before I got to the porch steps. As I walked to the car, I could have sworn I heard the hinges groan, even though the door was now closed tightly. Driving home, I kept thinking about the weird look in his eye and the way the wife never seemed to blink. I stopped at 7-Eleven for a soda and checked my pocket. The $50 was still there, folded too neatly, a little damp, like it had been kept in the fridge. It had this sour, almost metallic reek to it I couldn't explain. When I got back to my apartment, I tucked the bill in my wallet under my license, already planning how I'd use it for gas. My roommate Jay was up gaming, and I showed him the tip. "Dude, lucky," was all he said. The next morning, though, when I opened up my wallet, the $50 was gone. I tore apart my backpack, my jacket, even my car. Nothing. My pocket was empty, no bill, not even a receipt. I half convinced myself I'd spent it at 7-Eleven, but the receipt said I'd paid with my card. There was no trace of it, and nothing about the night's delivery seemed less strange for it. A week later, another order came in for their address. This time, only the man answered. Looked worse, like he'd aged a decade overnight. When I asked how his wife was, he just frowned, his mouth working like he wanted to say something but couldn't decide how. Instead, he said, "Not everything you're paid for sticks with you." I got chills. His hands were empty this time. He didn't tip, didn't even make eye contact after that. There were no more laughs, no small talk, and no sign of his wife. Over the next few months, the house would go dark for weeks at a time. I stopped getting their orders. Some people say I just lost the money, or maybe I dreamed up the whole exchange after too many late shifts. But sometimes when I go through stacks of old receipts in my glove box, I swear I catch that metallic, vinegary scent again. Those bills, cold and slightly damp, as if money can vanish just like the people who give it to you. I still deliver, but I double-check for tips now, never assuming anything is real until I hold it twice. Some nights, driving past that part of town, I see the glow of their porch, and I wonder if I've actually been paid for all the things I've carried away. If they were real, if all it was real. Story number 13. You get a lot of weird customers doing pizza delivery in the more rural corners of the county. I've met hoarders, prank callers, and once even a guy who wanted to pay in comic books. You learn to take it all in stride. Still, there's one delivery I try not to think about, but it creeps up on quiet nights, especially if I catch a glimpse of a stray dog in my headlights. It was maybe 11:40 on a Saturday in late November, one of those pitch-dark, misty nights when the clouds make high beams feel useless. My last run was a farmhouse way off the main road, probably a mile down an unlit gravel drive. I pulled off the 2-lane and bumped my way through scraggly trees and uncut grass with the GPS lagging behind, knuckles tight on the wheel. That's when my headlights caught eyeshine. 2 big yellow orbs glowing from the trees lining the drive. They blinked, then disappeared, and a cold prickling ran up my spine. I shook it off, probably just a raccoon or a stray looking for food, but as I parked in the yard, I saw it again. There was a huge black dog sitting stone still by the porch, its silhouette broader than a German shepherd's, ears pointed straight up, tail curled around its legs. I hesitated before getting out of the car, just watching through the window, but it didn't move. I cracked the door, pizza in one hand, and the dog padded over, moving in complete silence on massive paws. It came right up to my window and just stared, close enough to fog the glass with slow, deep breaths. Its eyes never left mine. I noticed its fur pulsed strangely in the moonlight, rippling, almost flickering, from inky black to a dusty brown and back again, like the colors couldn't decide which they wanted to be. "Hey, buddy," I mumbled, trying to sound light. "I'm not your delivery." The dog kept staring. I tried to shoo it with a little wave, and it moved away, circling the car slowly in the dirt, paws barely making a sound. I exhaled, got out hesitantly, and slipped the pizza bag over my shoulder. I froze when I heard scratching, not the usual scratching of a dog's nails on metal, but a tracing, patternless scraping on my back tire. Glancing down, I saw the dog's paw pressed against the rubber, but the print it left was longer, more like a handprint than anything I'd seen a dog make. 4 long, narrow marks arced across the dusty hubcap, with a 5th thumb pressed at an unnatural angle. Trying not to show nerves, I walked up the porch, heart thumping. Before I could lift my hand to knock, the door creaked open and a guy stepped out, 40 or 50, in work boots and jeans, face long and pale under the porch lamp, leash looped in his hand. "He's just happy to see you," the guy said conversationally, nodding at the dog, which was now sitting, head cocked, at the bottom of the steps. His voice was gravelly, almost absent, like he was reciting from memory. I tried to focus as he paid, counting out bills with twitching fingers. I could sense the dog at my back and noticed its shadow on the porch. It was stretching strangely, growing tall and narrow instead of long, For a moment, it almost looked like the silhouette of a child with wild hair. I had to remind myself to breathe. While I was tearing the receipt, the dog crept up the steps, moving with odd, jerky motions. It stood on its hind legs, towering behind the man, tongue lolling out at an awkward angle. That was creepy enough, but as I looked closer, I could swear it was smiling. An unsettling split smile that revealed gums and far too many teeth. The man didn't react, just told me, "He gets smarter every night." Before I could stammer out a reply, I heard a whisper, a raw, flat voice right beside my ear. "Come back tomorrow. Bring more." My blood went icy. The owner was facing me, lips barely moving, but the voice felt wrong, echoing as if it was inside my skull, vibrating somewhere behind my eyes. My hand trembled as I finished the transaction. Trying not to look back, I rushed to my car, but I heard the scraping again. Nails, then claws, and then something softer, like skin. It sounded almost like someone running their hand along the car door. As I slammed my door shut, I caught one last look. The man and the dog were outlined by the porch light. The dog was hunched low again on four legs, eyes huge and glassy. But its face looked half wrong now. Snout too short, ears melting back against a jaw that was still grinning. It licked its lips, and the tongue was bizarrely long. The man raised a hand, not in a wave, but more like pressing his palm toward me. A motion mirrored by the dog, which lifted one misshapen paw and held it midair in the same uncanny way. I peeled out down the driveway. In the rear view, their shapes receded into the blackness, the dog's eyes still catching the last of my taillights. That's not the worst of it. While driving home, my rear window fogged for no reason, and in the cold murk, I caught the faintest impression of a child's face, a shape with sunken eyes and a stretched mouth, lips mouthing words I couldn't hear. When I stopped at a red light, I checked the back seat and found muddy smears, five-fingered, human-sized, right where the dog had been standing. I never went back to that address, though the order came in once more, and I had to swap with a new driver. I told myself it was just a big stray and a weird farmer, maybe something wrong with the air or my own mind. But still, on lonely nights, I sometimes hear deep breathing outside my window and catch the shape of a too-tall dog grinning through the glass. Still to date, it haunts me. I used to be a dog person, but after this, it's hard to forget what happened that night. The questions still remain unanswered, but the creepy feeling still lingers. Everywhere with me, wherever I go, wherever I am. Story number 14. I used to work late-night shifts driving for a pizza chain in a semi-rural area outside St. Paul. I'd been at it for 2 years, but then something happened which shook me, chilled me more than anything before or since. It was late February after a fresh snowstorm, the kind of quiet where every tire crackle sounds twice as loud and the clouds above glow faintly from distant town lights. Our shop was mostly dead when the order came in. 7 large, all with extra cheese, for a house address about 15 minutes out of town, almost at the edge of the woods. The note just said, "Leave an entryway, birthday party." Double exclamation points. I loaded up, mapped it in my phone, and hit the road. The drive was lonely enough, barely anyone out except the odd tail light in the distance. When I got to the house, it was set about 50 yards off the 2-lane road, behind some skeletal trees and a warped wooden fence. There were balloons tied up along the fence, white and pastel pink, half deflated and shivering in the wind. All the windows were bright, though the curtains were closed. The porch light was flickering, and there was a plastic banner jutting out from just above the door that I could only make out as "Happy Buy." The rest curled behind the gutter. Under the porch, old kids' toys were scattered around. Plastic dump trucks, a broken hula hoop, some dolls face down in snow. Not a sound, not even a dog barking. I got all 7 pizzas in one trip, because I'm stubborn like that, and shuffled up the porch steps. The door was painted a dirty white, barely holding the color, old cracks spidering up from the base. I started to knock, and that's when I noticed the door was already slightly open, just enough to let out a sliver of warm air. So I called in, "Pizza delivery." Nothing. The house smelled faintly of blown-out candles and something sweet, like melting icing. I pushed the door open wider with my elbow and stepped inside. First hit me, the silence. Even with all the lights on, the place was dead quiet. I could hear the blood pumping in my ears. The entryway was cramped, stacked with pairs of little kid shoes and coats with bright patterns, like rainbows and horses. Down the hall to my right, I could see colorful mylar balloons pressed to the ceiling and birthday hats scattered over a long table. Half the chairs were tipped over. A record player somewhere deeper in the house was scratched, looping the first eerie strain of Happy Birthday over and over and over. Still no voices, no footsteps, no sign of movement. Every house sounds alive, even when it's empty. Creaks, the fridge running, the whir of a furnace. This place felt like a vacuum sucking everything up. My shoes squeaked on the linoleum and made me jump. I set the stack of boxes on the table, called out again, "Hello, pizza's here." That song kept skipping, scratchy and warped, like someone had left it playing for hours. Just as I turned to go, I heard a series of thuds overhead. Someone running fast, maybe a kid, across the floor upstairs. It jolted me, but I figured, maybe they're all hiding for a surprise. Still, I wanted out of there. Then came the moment that burned itself into my memory, something that made every hair on my arms prickle. Along the wall in the hallway, in the film of dust on the boards, there were tiny bare footprints, perfectly clear, walking away from the table. They were too small for anyone but a toddler, but there were no wet prints leading in from outside. Nothing to say how a barefoot child had walked there. I felt a cold gust right then, not from outside, but like someone had brushed past me fast. And the door behind my back slammed shut so hard my teeth snapped together. Every single light in the house snapped out at once. The record stopped mid-note. Total black, silence, and then all at once a chorus of children's voices started singing, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you." But it was warped, slower, and it sounded like they were standing right behind me, their breath prickling the back of my neck. Their voices didn't sound happy. They wavered between a hiss and a whisper, each syllable just a half step too slow. My heart stuttered. I was frozen for a second. I fumbled for my phone, lighting up the hallway with the screen's blue glow. There was no one there, just those footprints and some old birthday hats laid out in a crooked circle on the dusty floor now. I tore open the door and sprinted to my car, nearly slipping down the steps. I drove a good 2 blocks before I caught my breath. Back at the store, I told my boss the story. He went real still and asked which house it was. When I told him, he shivered. He said, "Don't take any more orders for that address if they come in." Apparently, he'd heard stories. The house had been vacant for nearly a decade after a fire. A family, parents, 3 kids, had died upstairs. Some kids in town liked to break in and urban legend it up, but he doubted they'd be there in the dead of winter. I can't shake that memory. The cold, the warped song, the tiny footprints in the dust. It could have been elaborate squatters, a sick prank, or even my mind playing tricks. Then there are some nights when I close my eyes, I hear that skipping record and those not quite human voices singing just for me. No more birthday parties for me. Not ever again. Story number 15. I was 2 years deep into pizza delivery, mostly working night shifts in the older part of a mid-sized Midwest city. But a few months back, I experienced something which blurred the thin line between what was real and what was not. Honestly, it still bothers me when I let my mind wander around midnight. It started like any other Thursday night. A couple of back-to-back drop-offs, a lull while the ovens caught up, and then a call-in order placed by a woman for an extra-large veggie, cheesy bread, and a 2-liter. The address was a few blocks from my own apartment, in a row of old brick houses that all looked the same. 1930s charm, chain-link fences sagging into patchy lawns. I pulled up around 9 p.m. There was light in the windows and a yellowed plastic porch lamp struggling against the dark. The wind cut through my jacket, carrying a faint smell of something like incense and dust. The sidewalk was icy under my boots as I walked up, the pizza bag warming my arm. But what got me instantly was the front door. Instead of wood or metal, the door was this giant, smooth panel of smoky glass, almost black in the night, but shining like a mirror wherever the porch light hit. Heavy brass handle, no visible scratches or cracks, just my own weirdly stretched reflection, pizza box in hand, eyes dark with the city behind me. My first thought, who the hell puts a mirror on their front door? I knocked, and the sound was more of a flat, dull thunk than you get with wood. My reflection shook a little with each tap. For a second I waited, and then something inside moved. The door swung open about halfway. Standing there was a woman in her mid-60s or so. Heavy-set, short gray hair wrapped in a scarf. She wore a thick maroon sweater and these big gold-rimmed glasses that made her eyes look even bigger than they probably were. She smiled almost nervously. But what stuck with me is she didn't look at me. Instead, she kept glancing just past my shoulder, up and down like I'd shown up with someone else. Hi, pizza? I started, holding out the box. She didn't move right away. Her voice was hoarse. Is it just you out there? I kind of laughed, more out of discomfort. Yeah, just me, I said. I'm the only one working this late. But she still wouldn't look me straight on. Instead, her gaze darted between me, to the shadows behind me, and then back at the mirror itself. The porch light made her face float on the dark glass behind her, doubling our features. My own reflection stretched long and wrong, blurring into the background until I could have sworn there was a third person back there, a pale shape, way taller than me, with an indistinct face. The lady stuck her hand out fast, snatched the pizza box, then stared at my torso, lips moving as if counting under her breath. He's right there, she whispered, so soft I almost didn't catch it. He came with you. That's when she met my eyes for the first time, and they were wide and wet, almost pleading. Don't you see him? He's mouthing the words you're saying. Look, in the glass, over your shoulder. The skin on my arms prickled. I turned my head slowly, looking at our reflections. My face, hers, and, just for a second, another shape, standing nearly behind my left shoulder. I tried to convince myself it was just a weird reflection, an angle trick, maybe a smudge. But as I shifted, the shape didn't move the way a reflection should. The woman started muttering, clutching the box and the bag of cheesy bread tight to her chest. He's not supposed to come in. He's only supposed to stay in the glass. The 2-liter rolled to the threshold. She didn't seem to notice. She suddenly slammed the door so hard I lurched back, my hand almost caught. On the other side of the mirror door, her silhouette faded, but my reflection remained. Just me, pizza bag now almost empty. But for the briefest moment, behind my own image, that pale suggestion of a person hovered, featureless, like a fog pressed up against cold glass. I blinked, shook my head, and when I looked again, it was gone. Only my own creeped-out expression staring back at me. I picked up the 2-liter from the step, hesitated, then decided she probably wouldn't want me ringing again. I left it by the threshold and practically jogged back to my car. On the drive home, every time streetlights flickered or I caught my reflection in passing windows, I checked for a pale silhouette behind me, just in case. The next day, out of curiosity, I went again to that house. This time, I didn't ring the bell. Just wanted to see if what I had seen or experienced last night was real or not. Everything looked fine. The sun shining but dimly. I saw my reflection, just me in the glass door. I was relieved until I blinked, and I swear on things, there was a man, weirdly angled, face distorted, all ugly, standing behind me. I froze on the spot. I thought it was my reflection, but it was as if I had been paralyzed. I was unable to move, and then I saw the man slowly raising what looked like a hand, almost keeping on my shoulder. I shuddered and closed my eyes, bracing for anything that was going to happen, and then nothing happened. I opened my eyes after a few minutes and saw nothing but just my own reflection. No one standing behind me. Just as I was ready to leave, the old lady opened the door and was surprised to see me. She told me that she had not ordered anything. It was awkward enough, so I did the pleasantries and ran as fast as I could towards my car. After reaching the shop, I asked if anyone else had delivered to the Mirror Door house. One of the older drivers raised an eyebrow and said, "Old Mrs. Brandt? She puts that door up every few months. Says it keeps things out. Says sometimes it draws things in." He told me, "You're not the first to come back kind of rattled. She's had Weird things happen. Says she sees people following drivers. He asked me if something had happened and I shoved off the topic. Unable to form words, my mind raced with thoughts. Thoughts that I couldn't explain to anyone. I laughed it off, told myself it was just a bad reflection, tired eyes, late shift. But even weeks later, whenever I caught myself in a mirror with bad lighting or too many shadows, I'd squint just over my own shoulder, double-checking that it was just me in the glass. Sometimes I tell myself it was a trick of the light, or that Mrs. Brandt had scared me into seeing things. But sometimes, late at night, when my own front door squeaks and I see myself doubled in the living room window, I wonder if something was waiting to come through. And I still don't trust mirrors after dark.